You're watching The Sports Objective, the podcast for Pirates.
What is going on, college football fans? Welcome in to the Sports Objective, and you're watching the Inside Slant as we're taking a look at Week 1. And one of the matchups this week, and the final matchup of the week, taking place on Labor Day, Monday night, 8 o'clock, under the lights at Wallace Wade Stadium. The Clemson Tigers taking on the Duke Blue Devils, second-year head coach Mike Elko. And to talk about that matchup right now, we're very excited to welcome back in from the Clemson Insider. He's also the co-host of the Bleav in Clemson Football Podcast, and that is Will Vandervort. Will, we appreciate your time.
Hi, Bubba. Thanks for having me, man. It's always good to come on your show. I know I come in a couple times a year, and I always appreciate you guys bringing me back.
Yeah, it's great to have you back, and a lot has changed there at Clemson. Maybe not so much in volume, but in terms of the number of changes that have been made, but a huge change following last season, and it really kind of turned some heads around the college football world, bringing in Garrett Riley, who was so instrumental in leading TCU there with Sonny Dykes and the Horned Frogs to a national championship game appearance.
Yeah, that was the big move. I think it was probably, when you look at assistant coaches that moved around, I think it was the biggest move of the year. Garrett Riley was the Broyles Award winner for the Assistant Coach of the Year award. One of the top offensive coordinators in the country. You could probably say he's the top assistant coach in the country, right? And it was a big move. It was a move I think Dabo Swinney knew he needed to make. There was just too much, and it wasn't all Brandon Streeter's fault. He'll be the first one to tell you that. It was just a lot of things that I think defenses that caught up with what Clemson was doing and defended it a lot better. And I think also the development of DJ Uyunglele wasn't what they would hoped. And that was a big reason, I think, for Clemson's struggles the last 2 years. They just didn't have a quarterback that can make the throws. But they also had injuries at wide receiver. And so there are a lot of these things kind of, accumulated to why Clemson struggled offensively the last couple of years, especially in big games. And, so I think Dabo saw that he needed to make a change. He was I don't think he knew he would have Garrett Riley out there. I'll be honest with you. He called Lincoln Riley up. Him and Lincoln Riley are really, really good friends. It goes back to when Lincoln Riley was the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma, and they played Clemson in that 2015 Orange Bowl. Dabo and Lincoln really hit it off and became friends. So Dabo said that, Lincoln's one of the few guys he can trust that they can actually talk shop, and Lincoln doesn't go and tell everybody. He doesn't go tell his agent. He doesn't go tell other reporters. He keeps it between them to their, and Dabo says that's rare to have that kind of relationship with a guy that you can just kind of tell him what's going on, and he can tell you what's going on, and neither one of you are going to spill the beans to anybody. And so he really trusts Lincoln Riley. So he called him up and said, "Hey, look, I'm thinking about making a change. I just want to get your feedback. What do you think about these guys that I am considering maybe to go after to be my offensive coordinator?" And he gave him the names. And before Lincoln, gave his opinion on those guys, he said, "Well, hold up, Dabo." He says, let me throw somebody out there you didn't mention. He's like, "What do you think about Garrett?" And Dabo's like, "I thought Garrett's happy over there at TCU." And he's like, "Well, he is, but, I think he would be very interested in coaching over there at Clemson, and that would be something he would want to do to help him." And he's like, so Dabo's like, "Well, yeah, I'd love to talk to him." And that's kind of how it started. And it didn't take very long before the two agreed to work together. And now he's over here at Clemson. And so, yeah, it's going to be a nice dynamic with the way his offense is. Cade Klubnik is somebody that Lincoln Riley tried to recruit at SMU and also at TCU. And, Cade Klubnik, of course, as we know, committed to Clemson and is here at Clemson now. And so this is the quarterback he's wanted to run his system, and now he's got him at Clemson, and they feel like they got the weapons on the outside, and this is going to be kind of a different offense. We've heard a lot of good things in camp about it. So it's going to be interesting to see that wide open air raid kind of offense playing at Clemson, which has always been more of that. I wouldn't say pro style because it wasn't, but more vertical passing game and things of that nature, and obviously leaning on the run. This is going to kind of be a little different. I think they will lean on the run because of their talent there, but he's going to spread people out, and it's going to be interesting to see.
And that's one of the things I heard Dabo mention it in an interview recently, and that being the commitment to running the football, that he would not have hired a true air raid guy, but Lincoln and Garrett, as well as others, have progressed and realized the importance of running the football in addition to all the air raid passing concepts they employ, and that's something you look at what Lincoln did at Oklahoma. He was really running the ball. It was essentially 50-50, maybe even running it a little bit more than he was throwing it.
Yeah, I mean, and Garrett's the same way. You go back and look at the TCU team last year, they had a 1,400-yard rusher, and that was with him not even playing in the national championship game. The young man didn't. He got injured in the semifinals against Michigan. So they had a 1,400-yard rusher. They ran the quarterback a lot, as we know, and so you're going to see that same kind of style here at Clemson. And you got a guy in Will Shipley who's a preseason All-American, Phil Maffa, a guy who can be, if he's playing anywhere else, is probably a all-conference kind of guy candidate. So he's it's a nice 1-2 punch they have at running back. And then you throw in Cade Klubnik, who they've bulked up to about 210 pounds. They want him to run the ball a little bit more this year. He's going to be involved in the running game. He has to be, because that's what this offense wants to do. They want to spread you out. Then they're going to do a lot of pulling with their guards and things of that nature. And, I like this offensive line that Clemson has in the sense that it fits what Garrett Riley does. And it's an athletic offensive line. It's not an offensive line that's always going to just push you around, though I think they can when they need to. But this more of an athletic offensive line that can get up and down the field more so than what he had when he was at TCU. So yeah, the principle's always there. You want to run the football. It's just a different way in which they want to do it. Instead of lining up and you're going, with 12 personnel or things of that, he's spreading you out. He's going to run a lot of 11 personnel. And for people who don't know what that means one tight end and one running back. And it's going to spread you out, and he's going to run. He's going to run that way. And so because the defense he's going to try to outnumber the defense is what he's going to try to do. So there's lots of ways you can run the football. And he found he actually called it to us, the media guys, before camp started. He called it dirt aid instead of air raid. Dirt raid is what he called it, because they're going to lean on Will Shipley a lot, I think, especially early in the season, because they got to get the wide receivers and Cade Klubnik on the same page. I don't think it's going to take as long as some people might think that will, but obviously it's still an unknown at this point in time. But we've heard a lot of good things in camp about the wide receivers, the tight ends, and obviously Cade Klubnik throwing the football.
Yeah, you referenced some of those good things that you're hearing. I know here within the last few weeks during camp, you wrote an article where you were talking to some of the defensive players and the challenges that this offense presents in practice. So if you would elaborate a little on that.
Yeah, so this goes back to the spring too. The defense talked about how, because of the way Clemson, Garrett Riley does it and how their offense is going to be, it challenges the defense in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different sets and formations they're not used to, things they haven't seen necessarily. And so when they're going out in practice, that's the first time they're seeing it. It's challenged them. It's caused them to really kind of have to go and look and say, okay, we gotta do a better job of this way. But the offense has had a lot of success, and it doesn't mean that Clemson's defense is not good, because Clemson's got probably one of the best defenses coming back in the country. And I think the defense has had its moments and ways against the offense in the scrimmages. You would say in the two scrimmages, the defense actually won those scrimmages, but the challenges the offense presented, put a lot of stress on their defense, and the offense did have some success moving the ball, did have some big explosive plays. And this is things that the defensive guys, we talked to Barrett Carter, we talked to Rook Roro, Tyler Davis, Xavier Thomas. All these guys have said that, this is what happening the last couple of years. These kind of big plays in practice weren't happening. They weren't seeing them as much. And so this is something that is new to them, and they've really kind of understood it and looked at it and said, hey, look, this is going to make us better, that we're having an offense that's really challenging us in practice. It's been a very challenging, competitive camp, and these guys are ready to get out there and show everybody what they can do. I'm interested to see what this offense looks like when that defense, which brings back 8 starters from a year ago, and brings back a defensive front that many consider to be the best in the country, and got the 2 best linebackers probably in the country, in Barrett Carter and Jeremiah Trotter. I'm interested to see what this offense really does look like, because these are future NFL players that are saying how good this offense has been in practice.
Yeah, many college football writers and folks who cover it for a living really believe that Clemson can get back to the college football playoff this year. There's no doubt. And honing in on Monday night's game, Duke, what a story they were last year under Mike Elko. I really liked the hire. Didn't necessarily expect him to win 9 games in year one, but those 4 losses, 3 of the 4 losses were by 3 points or less, including 1 in overtime, and the widest margin of defeat they had was 8 points. So what a first year for him in Durham. Yeah,
Mike Elko, Dabo joked about it in ACC Media Days, right? He's like, I can't get away from this guy. He's like, he first of all, he's at Wake Forest and he's doing his thing there and he's confusing us at Wake Forest. He goes to Notre Dame and now, he's over there getting in our way over there. And then he goes over to Texas A&M for a couple of years. And he's like, and of course we got to play Texas A&M. He says now he's over here at Duke and just doing his thing at Duke, and he's doing it well. Last year, Duke was the story of the ACC last year, going 9-4. I think it's only the 3rd time in Duke history they've won 9 games in a season. That's amazing, especially when you think about those great Wallace Wade teams back in the early 30s and 40s, right? So that was amazing that that's only the 3rd time that's happened, and the fact also that he did it coming off a year where Duke was just so bad, right? They were just so bad, especially defensively, and as we mentioned earlier before the show, he's gonna do a lot of things defensively where he runs a 4-2-5 set and he moves guys around, so you never know who's what, where the Mike linebacker is, who's coming, who's not coming. He wants to try to confuse a quarterback as much as he can, and so we're going to see a lot of that on Monday night. And then I think a lot of the reason for their success is they really leaned on an offense that's a very experienced offense that has a very good quarterback in Riley Leonard. And Riley Leonard, I say he's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the ACC. You can argue and say he's top 3. He really, of guys coming back. And, he can kill you with his arm and he can kill you with his legs. He threw for over 3,000 yards and 20 touchdowns last year, and also ran for almost 700 yards and 13 touchdowns. He's their leading rusher from a year ago, so they use him a lot in the running game. If he gets 3rd and long situations, and if you're sitting in man coverage, which Clemson does a lot of on the backside, then if you can't get to him and you leave an alley, he's going to take off and he's going to run for 20, 30 yards and or score a touchdown. You saw him do that several times last year. I can remember games against Pitt and Miami that he did that. So, you got to be real disciplined on defense with him and have a spy on him and try to keep him in front of you at all times because he's such a dangerous player. Reminds me of a poor man's Joe Allen. Josh Allen, excuse me. He really does kind of remind me of that quarterback. 6'4", 212 pounds. He's only a junior. I really love his confidence, man. He came into ACC Media Days and he's like, he says, I got to make sure I don't overthink how good I am. My mom always brings me back down to earth. And so, he said when he's a kid, he said, Mom, I need somebody, because everybody's patting me on the back, telling me how good I am. I need somebody to tell me I'm not always good. So his mom took that upon herself. She said, okay, I'll tell you when you suck. And so she does. She tells him, she'll call him up and she'll say something like, don't blow it today. things of that nature, just to keep him humbled. So it's a real good story. And, he seems like a fine young man, a very confident young man. And I really like his personality, and I like the way he carries himself. And it's obvious he's very contagious to his team, and he's the reason why they're so successful last year.
Yeah, that's a funny story, and the exact opposite, a total 180 of what Mike Leach, said at the press conference as far as a fat little girlfriend and telling you what you want to hear.
Exactly, and he's just he's a breath of fresh air, because you just don't see that all the time in today's athletics with any coaches or players that are that open, especially in that kind of form. And it was pretty cool to see him, show his humility. And when a young person shows that humility, it kind of tells you a little bit about their personality and their character and who they are outside of football, right? And so we got a little bit of that, and that's why, look, I'm a fan of them. I got to cover the game, and obviously I'm going up there and covering it from the Clemson side of things. But man, how can you not pull for that guy? I mean, you want to pull for him, and so I was a Riley Leonard fan before I met him, and I'm even more so now. And so, I love the way he plays the game. He really plays the game at quarterback that fits what the quarterback is in today's football. When you think about a guy who can do both, he can run and pass, and is really a dangerous weapon.
Now, last I saw, I think the spread in this one was about 12.5, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you look at this matchup, you talk about some of the returning pieces on each side. But, what are your few keys as you start to break this one down, like the articles you've put out with the Clemson Insider about this matchup? Do you think that spread's a little higher, about right?
Yeah, I think the spread's about right. I think this is going to be a competitive game. I don't think Clemson's going to go in there and beat them by 28 points like they did 10 years ago. It's amazing. These two teams have only played – these are two original members of the Atlantic Coast Conference, right? And they've only played 4 times since 2008. 4 times. Clemson hasn't played in Durham since 2012 when Taj Boyd and Sammy Watkins went down there and Nuke Hopkins, and they beat them 56-20. That's not going to happen this year. Duke is like I said, they're a very formidable opponent for Clemson. It's a good opening game test, I think, for the Tigers, because they got to play well. Because if they don't play well, Duke's good enough to beat them. If Clemson's playing its B and C game, Duke can beat them. And so they got to take care of the football. Most importantly, that's something they struggled with late in the season in losses to South Carolina, Notre Dame, and Tennessee. They got to take care of the ball there. I mean, I think that's the number one important thing. The offense doesn't need to put any stress on the defense. Allow the defense to do what it can, because it's going to be hard for any team to move the ball consistently on this Clemson defense throughout the year. So you got to make sure as an offense you're not putting them in bad situations, right? And then I think from when we look at it offensively, what the Tigers need to do is I think they need to run the football. I think Duke's going to want to stop the run. I think that's going to be their number one key, is to put pressure on Cade Klubnik and those wide receivers. But I don't think that is. I think Clemson can have some success running the ball, so they need to really stick with it. Duke's physical football team. That's the one thing I think when you think of Mike Elko and what his style is as a defensive coach, and also what he's now moved over to his offense, is you're going to be physical. And so you may beat us, but you're going to lead that game like, man, I got to really hit that hot tub. So, Clemson's they're going to get punched in the face by Duke early in this game. How do they respond? And how does that offense respond when Duke's going to really do everything they can to force Cade Klubnik and those wide receivers to beat them early in the game? But they got to stick with the run and Will Shipley, and I think that's going to be the key. And then on the other side, I think defensively, it all just comes down to stopping Riley Leonard. They really need to contain him, keep him in the pocket. And if there is a weakness on this Duke team, I think it's at their skill players. They got a couple guys that are really good, but for the most part, there's not anybody really on that defense that says, other than their tight end, who's a very good tight end and is an NFL prospect, other than that, there isn't anybody that you're really scared of, right, as a defensive coordinator. There's nothing that's saying it's keeping you up at night other than the quarterback. So you got to make him stay in the pocket. Don't let him use his legs to hurt you, and make him have to, and those wide receivers make plays downfield and limit the tight end, because he loves to go to the big tight end over there and make big plays. And I think that's going to be something that the Tigers have to make sure they're aware of as well. So those are the keys. And then I'm going to tell you one of the biggest things a lot of people are talking about. Clemson's got a brand new kicker this year. And, BT Potter, he's off in the NFL trying to make a team over there. And, he was so good the last 4 years, making over 80% of his kicks. The guy was like almost perfect from 50-plus yards. He was an absolute weapon for Clemson. I'm interested to see if this game's tighter than we think, if the special teams doesn't come into it. So that's going to be a big thing to watch for Clemson in this game, is how well they do. Does Gunn, the new kicker, how does he do kicking the ball? And as far as also kickoffs, Clemson's not used to covering kicks because BT Potter always kicked them in the end zone. So it's going to be interesting to watch that too. But I think it's going to be closer than the 13. The line is 13 as of today. I don't think the game's going to be – I think Clemson's going to win, but I think it's going to be closer than 13. I think it's going to be like a 10-point game. Clemson scores late to kind of take control of the game, and I think that's kind of football game we're going to see on Monday night.
That's kind of my thought process as well. I was leaning toward about a 10-point victory for the Tigers. But and you answered one of my other questions there as well. I know Bud Foster's defenses at Virginia Tech had given Lincoln Riley's air raid approach fits prior to Lincoln Riley getting the best of him a time or two later in his time at East Carolina. And not knowing enough about the personnel on each side, I was curious if Duke may take the same type of approach with a lot of press coverage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they're going to – I think, like I said, Mike Elko, he likes to do a lot of exotic blitzes, right? He's going to come from different angles where he's going to bring – he's going to bring you his corner. He's going to bring a safety off the edges. He's going to do different things with his linebackers. He's going to kind of bring them up the middle or maybe stun them and bring them off the edges. He does a lot of different things to try to confuse the quarterback. He's never – like he moves his front a lot. He'll have guys standing up that normally wouldn't be standing up, and so it's going to kind of try to confuse the quarterback. So he's going to do a lot of different things to try to confuse Cade Klubnik. Like you mentioned, Riley Leonard's got some background against him, knows kind of what to do, and I think both guys know kind of what they like to do, and so it's going to be a nice little chess match there. And I think it really just comes down to what Cade Klubnik recognizes, and film study is going to be very important in this game. Now, the good news for Clemson is, Clemson's got a whole year on Duke and what Duke does with their personnel, because it's pretty much the same personnel where, Mike Elko doesn't have that with Clemson, obviously. He's going to have to go back and look at SMU film and things of that nature. But as I mentioned earlier, the TCU offensive line last year is not nearly as athletic as this Clemson offensive line. And there's things that, I think Garrett Riley is going to be able to do in this Clemson offense that he couldn't do over at TCU because of the athleticism of his offensive line.
Appreciate your time as always. We'd love to have you back on midseason to talk about how Garrett Riley and this offense, are producing. But before we let you run, plug the Clemson Insider and also your podcast.
Yeah, so you can find my stuff at theclemsoninsider.com. We got a bunch of stuff over there. We got, as a matter of fact, I'm heading over here in just a little bit to go see Dabo Swinney's press conference. Today is Tuesday, Clemson. I know everybody else is Thursday, but it's Tuesday for us because we're a couple days behind because of the way they set it up, because they're playing on Labor Day night. So technically at Clemson it's Tuesday. So we're at his weekly press conference, and so we'll have some stuff on that, and we'll have previews all the way up to the Duke game, and then also after the game as well. You can also check my podcast out at Bleav in Clemson Football with LaVon Kirkland. That is up. We're live. We do it live every Tuesday night at 6:15. You can find that on the Clemson Insider YouTube page. So if you want to go back and watch it, what we did the other night, you can. I got a little preview of the Duke game. Also talk some ACC football as well. With LaVon, the former Clemson Tiger, Pittsburgh Steeler. Great. So we got that. And then, you can also download it and listen to it on our podcast, Apple Podcast or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts at. So lots of ways to find us there. You go to Twitter and find me at Steeler Will. As well, you go to our Facebook page, the Clemson Insider, and find us there too. So all the different ways to find us. We appreciate you. And then, Bubba, appreciate you